So I'm just going to call the panelists to the stage and then I'll introduce you guys. Come on up. So, from empowering Afghan women to defending Ukrainians against the aggression of Putin, to liberating Palestinians from the Israeli occupation, to freeing civilians across the continent from colonial monetary repression. Bitcoin is a tool for individual freedom and financial empowerment. And we're going to be talking specifically about the social justice angle of that. So with me, I have Yusuf Nessary, who is the co-founder of the Built with Bitcoin Foundation. He's a lifelong humanitarian and nonprofit founder. We have Mary Imasuen, who is creative media associate at BitNob, where she works on engaging with Bitcoin organizations and educating users of Bitcoin. And she also runs several podcasts and is a Bitcoin Twitch streamer. And we have Wolali, who is the head of operations of the Togolese Civil League. And also, by the way, one of our generous hosts here at the Africa Bitcoin Conference with Frida. Please give them a round of applause. So I think it's important to start off understanding where we all come from and how we come to Bitcoin. So Yusuf, what was your journey to Bitcoin like? How did you come to this?
Good afternoon to everybody. Very honored to be on this panel. My journey to Bitcoin began 13 years ago when I first came and set foot on this beautiful continent. And I've been back and forth probably about over 100 times. And every single time that I come back, I learn something new. And about 10 years ago, I started my very first nonprofit. It was called Zamzam Water, and I was building water well systems in Asia and Africa. And the very first country that I visited was Rwanda here in Africa. And in 2017, we were raising funds for a very significant project in my mother country of Afghanistan. And there was a contribution that came in. It was a very significant and large amount, and it was flagged as potential fraud, not only because of where it came from in the IP address, but the amount that it was in. And so as you can imagine, as a nonprofit director, receiving funds is hard as it is, but to have to reach out to a potential contributor and ask them from another form of payment is a very uncomfortable email and conversation to have. The person on the other side said, do you accept Bitcoin? And I said, what is Bitcoin? I had absolutely no idea what Bitcoin was at the time. This is in the beginning of 2017. So as anyone else would, I went out to Google and I typed in, what is Bitcoin? Literally. And so many things came up. A lot of negative, some positive, a lot of money laundering and terrorism and what have you. So I thought to myself, do I really want to get involved in this form of payment? Thankfully, I was messaging this person back and forth via email. And it was kind of like this peer-to-peer kind of interaction that I was having. I was asking him questions. He was answering back to me, and I thought to myself, well, why is this not being widely used in the nonprofit sector? There's so many positive use cases to this. And the person on the other side of that email was Ray Yusuf, who is the founder of Paxful and is also the co-founder of the Built with Bitcoin Foundation. And from that time, from that email, from 2017, we've been able to build and repair 12 schools and education centers in 12 different countries on 4 different continents, including here in beautiful Africa.
So Mary, you engage thousands of people probably about Bitcoin every day. You run at least 3 podcasts that I'm aware of, and you're also a Twitch streamer and a gamer. How did you come to be doing this?
So my Bitcoin journey actually started in 2015. I was a freelance writer as of that time, and one of my clients reached out and they're like, can we pay you in Bitcoin? And I didn't know what Bitcoin was, so I asked my sister, who was a step ahead of me in the area of Bitcoin. She had already used Bitcoin already to solve a payment issue, and so she said, tell your client that you accept Bitcoin. So I trusted her, and I said, yeah, I accept Bitcoin. So she created a wallet for me, and I received my first set of Bitcoin for the first time as a freelance writer. So like fast forward 2020, I was like, okay, I think I need to start learning about Bitcoin. Because as of that 2015, I sold all my Bitcoin. But so 2020 was a defining moment for me to like get back on track. And I bought my first set of Bitcoin early 2021. And I was really happy and excited. It was great to buy Bitcoin for the first time and to actually understand how it works. But I had this desire to use an app that makes it easier for me to buy Bitcoin, because the app that I initially used was a little too complicated for me, and I'm a non-technical person. And so I came across BitNob, which is where I work at right now, and it was an app that was a lot easier to use, and that was where my journey just really took off, because I felt a lot more comfortable buying Bitcoin easily and dollar cost averaging. So I went from, so that when I got that news and I was able to use BitNob, I was so inspired to create a podcast episode where I reviewed the BitNob app. The BitNob team really loved the podcast episode, and before I knew it, they asked me to join their team to set up their podcast called the Knobcast, and I'm the host of that podcast, where I talk to Bitcoiners and where we talk about Bitcoin projects. So I decided to start my own little project in gaming. So I'm a Bitcoin-only gamer on Twitch. So I believe that Bitcoin gaming could be also a way of spreading Bitcoin adoption to people. And I decided to take this to Twitch, the platform where a lot of gamers reside. And now I'm a Twitch affiliate, which is a huge milestone for Bitcoin gaming for me, because I believe that through this means, a lot of Bitcoiners who love gaming can now transition into Twitch and literally make it a place where people can also watch Bitcoin-only games. So yeah, that's part of what I do.
And Wolali, I've been aware of your organization for some time, of course, through Farida, because you guys are fighting for democracy in your home country of Togo, which has been under one family rule for decades. What brought you personally, and also what brought your organization to Bitcoin?
We started realizing at some point, late 2019, that the monetary system as it's set up has been used as a tool of oppression, oppressing people. That government have harnessed that as a tool to disempower people, instead of enabling a step toward justice, social justice, economic justice, that the governments have harnessed the power of the monetary system to oppress people. But even that, we've been accustomed to that for a long time, where the monetary system as it's set up has been used to target activists or dissenters, where you can be cut off the market system just because of political opinion, and it's been going on. So when we start realizing that Bitcoin is an alternative to the traditional monetary system, we started paying attention to how it works. So we started by educating ourselves, Farida and I, about the Bitcoin system, understanding it more, and it solved an immediate challenge for us, because most of the members of our organization are based in the diaspora, and for critical action at times, when we do need to raise funds, we do have people who live abroad but still are under the fear of contributing, because those operations can put them at risk or their families at risk. So first, it becomes a safe way to actually contribute and gather people, but it also becomes a way for us to expand our action. So beyond the traditional political system that we have in Togo, that is a multi-decade dictatorship, we also have the fact that Togo, being a Francophone country, is also under the grasp of a neocolonial money, which is the CFA. The CFA, in its current setup, has not been reformed, and stems from a colonial era where you have another country controlling the economy of 16 other countries. So we start looking at Bitcoin as an alternative, since the deciders are not willing to challenge the system as it is. And we started with the support of Paxful and other organizations, starting to educate people, because we believe that adoption of Bitcoin by the masses in those countries would unlock a lot of potential for not just for the youth that live there, but also creates spaces for political progress.
So Yusuf, Why Bitcoin? I know you've started nonprofits before the Built with Bitcoin Foundation, and you mentioned the fact that you once had payment difficulties with fiat currency. But what is different about running a philanthropic organization with Bitcoin as opposed to just doing it with fiat?
Yeah, so I think my journey to Bitcoin was obviously by accident. There was some divine intervention obviously there as well. But there's three main reasons why I believe that Bitcoin is superior when it comes to philanthropy. One of them being, when it comes to charity work or philanthropy work, there's a negative connotation around it of where is the money actually going? Is the money reaching the project itself? Is it reaching the people on the ground? So the level of transparency is obviously there, being able to check on the blockchain when funds are being donated, when they're being sent out, but also like the ethos behind don't trust, verify. I think that's very important to the fabric of our foundation. Secondly, I think accessibility is extremely important to what we do, to be able to send funds 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, regardless if it's a holiday, if it's a Sunday at 5 p.m. when the bank is not open. That's extremely important to the productivity of the work that we're doing on the ground. The more time it takes for us to send funds for work to be done, the more time it's going to take for the communities to be able to be served and be able to utilize those resources. And I think for us, efficiency, saving on cost and on time, those are two facets that kind of hinder the production and efficiency of a nonprofit.
And Mary, I'd like to dig a little deeper into your story, because I know that in a previous life you worked in a legal office and you saw a lot of stuff which basically pushed you in the direction of this need even before you knew that there was a potential solution here. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. So I studied law in the university, and the first place I worked at was at a human rights office in Lagos, Nigeria. So at the human rights office, we would get people who come in with their human rights concerns, and we try to solve the problem. Because the human rights office wasn't well funded, we could not take the matters to court, so we had to resort to mediating between the parties. And I've witnessed a lot of domestic abuse cases where women were physically abused. You know, they could have little children and they'd be sexually abused in front of their children. That has happened. I've witnessed a case like that, where this lady was sexually abused in front of her 3 children, the oldest being 3 years old. I've also seen cases where women would be pregnant, heavily pregnant, and they would have bruises all over their body. And we'd ask these women, like, why are you still in that house? Why don't you leave and save yourself from this problem? And she would be like, if I carry my kids and go, I won't be able to pay their school fees. I don't know how to take care of these children, or the job I'm doing right now isn't enough to cater for the expenses of these kids. And so I have no choice but to stay with the man who's abusing me. And sadly, because of the work that we're doing, we couldn't offer much help other than speaking to their husband or maybe a family member to try and mediate mediate between the parties. But oftentimes, maybe the issue would stop for a while, and then it'll start all over again, and we'll see these women back in the office. So when I got into Bitcoin, it became clear to me that if these women knew that they can be financially and economically empowered with Bitcoin, and they had their own source of income, maybe if they were doing like micro payments, tasks online to earn some sats, at least they would have some level of economic or financial freedom to be able to take care of their kids and leave these abusive environments, and know for sure that they're able to take care of their children or themselves. I also saw that with Bitcoin, a lot of these women would have the opportunity to stand up against the people who are hurting them or abusing them or treating them badly, because sometimes we endure economic and physical harm because we are afraid that we do not have what it takes to stand up against this person, because we know that we're probably going to be abused by them, either financially or emotionally or physically. So I saw, during my Bitcoin journey, I saw that Bitcoin could be the solution to this. And so there's need for great awareness, especially among women, to know that they can be empowered with Bitcoin. They can have an account or a wallet, a Bitcoin wallet of their own, where they have the seed phrases in their head, and there's no way another person, a family, or a group of people can, bully her, economically or financially. And I feel like this would give women more confidence to stand up for themselves and to leave dangerous situations.
So I'm struck by the fact that economic dependence is always a part of that individual relationship of coercion. A lot of these people are presumably unbanked. They don't have their own bank accounts and aren't allowed them. And what really stood out to me is that that's kind of similar to the relationship between ex-colonies and their former colonizer, because France obviously holds 80% of Togo's central bank reserves pretty much hostage inside the French central bank.
That's correct. So yeah, just like Mary is saying, with the trivial example of a couple's relationship where there's abuse, the structure of abuse is just a structure of power. And whether it's between one human and another human, or one institution such as a country or a state institution toward the individual, it is one that has to first create dependency, disempower, dehumanizing, before perpetuating the cycle of abuse. And that's the same mechanism that we are trying to undo by expanding it at a larger scale to say if we empower people, if we equip them, if we educate them, if we give them the means and the resources, if we bridge the gap that they have in terms of knowledge, then it will inexorably lead to weakening the system. Because if you can withdraw yourself from the influence of whomever is colonizing, abusing, repressing you, then at some point you will reach the tipping point, education being power. So though we have traditionally challenged every system from the top by aiming at the structure from the top, we do believe that Bitcoin presents a unique opportunity to think differently, to kind of chip away at the bottom while continue to shake the system at the core. And eventually, it will just be a matter of time until, because for us, democracy is just taking the power back to the people so they can exercise that power freely. So it's not about toppling anything, it's about rebalancing the structure of power so people can decide for themselves what they want to do with their lives in their country and create opportunities that expand to all, not just to a few.
So you're working simultaneously on the very low level of individuals and teaching individuals how to be economically independent and empowered, but also on the level of entire societies and nations.
Correct. And with Bitcoin being a tech, in the realm of tech, it also enabled the youth to learn the financial independence, but also bringing them new technology at the same time, which is equally critical in skilling them up to be sufficient to innovate, to create, to catch up and compete with the rest of the world, while in the same time freeing themselves from the shackles of oppression.
So Yusuf, you talk about some of the elements of the new mindset that Bitcoin gives you working in the nonprofit world about accountability and transparency. You're one of the nonprofit leaders who's made this step from kind of a pre-Bitcoin world to using Bitcoin in your operations. What do you see as holding back other people and the rest of the industry from also making this leap?
I mean, obviously many people will think about the volatility first and foremost. I think once you're able to understand it better and be educated on the benefits to Bitcoin, it far outweighs the cons than with the pros. I think when it comes to our line of work, everything begins and ends with the trust that we build with the communities in which we're serving. So that is Bitcoin aside, right? The peer-to-peer interaction that you're having, the ethos behind Bitcoin itself, of thinking about the long game, which is why I consider Built to Bitcoin not a charity, but a philanthropic initiative. Because we want to be able to think long term. We want our communities to become financially independent, as we all stated here today. I think a charity is focused more so on Band-Aid projects where it's just covering up the problem but not solving it. And I think Bitcoin is that solution. And as we're speaking about social justice, it's obviously a relative it's a relative definition for folks, right? Depending on your perspective on life, where you grew up, what your experience has been. But for me personally, in order for us to achieve social justice, you can't achieve that without financial liberation. And you cannot achieve financial liberation without Bitcoin. There's just no possible way. I'll give you one example. When my father came to the United States from Afghanistan in 1978 because of the Russian invasion, he absolutely knew nothing about financial gains, financial credit history, the banking system, nothing of the sort. So in a span of 40 years, my father, he filed for bankruptcy not once but twice, crippling his financial history within the United States, only because he wanted to achieve a better quality of life for his family, right? But he fell to the predatory practices of the banking system, the banking institution. If in fact Bitcoin was around then and the financial literacy behind it, I think my father would have made much more mature financial decisions, right? So aside from the Bitcoin, the work that we do incorporates financial literacy into everything that we do, whether we're building a water well project here in Kumasi, Ghana, or whether we're building a park bench in Oakland, California. We want to be able to allow the community to be able to learn about what money is and what money is supposed to do for you, and then the Bitcoin education comes after that. So it has to be a very structured, step-by-step process.
So Mary, how do you see this discussion of financial literacy? Because every time I hear Bitcoiners talking about Bitcoin, they always end up including the topic of financial literacy. Why do the two come so closely together, and have they done so in your experience?
Looking at Bitcoin from only the financial aspect is just one side of Bitcoin. I think there's so much more to Bitcoin than we think it is. We're seeing a lot of wallets and exchanges in the Bitcoin space, and I feel like we need to broaden our perspective a little more. That's why I'm very behind innovations around content creation. With the internet, information has become readily available a lot faster. And if we can use Bitcoin and the Lightning Network to compensate people for the value that they put out there on the internet, I think that could be a huge game changer. So personally for me, I feel like if you look at content and how people create content in Bitcoin space, especially with the existing tools, Bitcoin Lightning enabled tools out there, I feel like this could also be another way to empower people. So if you look at platforms like Stacker News, ZapRead, Starbacker, Fountain.fm, like these are places people can share information and value, even spread awareness about abuse and things that are happening, and at the same time also get some sort of compensation for the hard work that they put into creating this content, and thereby empowering themselves, and thereby giving them that freedom from economic, financial oppression, because now just by using these Bitcoin platforms that support the content that you create, you're not only spreading information, giving value, but you're also creating for yourself a means through which you can sustain yourself, which is an amazing thing that the fiat world hasn't been able to create effectively. There have been attempts at doing so, but I think nothing comes close to what Bitcoin has been able to achieve. So let's go back to the example of the women being abused, for instance. Let's say these women are amazing at, coming up with amazing recipes. So imagine an abused mother who is great at cooking. She can share these information on like lightning-powered content platforms, and through there share her story. And who knows, like that could be a means through which she can step out of that abusive home, because she has now created for herself, using Bitcoin content creation tools, a means through which she can be financially and economically empowered, and thereby like secure the justice that she so rightfully deserves. And yeah, I think that is an area where I think a lot of Bitcoin innovation should go into. I feel like we are just scratching the surface. That's why this current Legends of Lightning tournament that's taking place is quite inspiring to me, because there are really interesting platforms on there that can support these kind of people who are who are not economically opportuned. So like these are things that I think we need to create more awareness around. And especially in Africa, I think Africans are extremely creative, and we've not been able to properly harness this creative energy. But through Bitcoin, I think we can harness this energy not only to send out information, get people more informed about Africa and and how Africa is, the culture, the story, but also give these people an opportunity to actually get value for the value that they put out.
So Wolali, I run a small non-profit organization working on human rights like yourself, and I'd love to hear what you guys are thinking about in terms of how to integrate Bitcoin into your operations and use it. How are you thinking about that? What are you going to do in the future? How are you introducing it to your team? I think you have over 100 volunteers, right?
Yes, so start with understanding the tool. So introducing it to literacy education. Literacy being an antidote to ignorance, whether it's ignorance because people are being kept in the dark or they just have not had the opportunity to learn. So education first. Also, second aspect is the safety of it, the safety of the community, enable activists to link up with other activists more securely and freely, share resources, share experience, share knowledge. Also opens up opportunities for a fundraiser that was not as practical with the fiat environment. And definitely through a venue like this, which is a project of the Togolese Civil League to bring a conversation like this to Africa. So by organizing this event, we really wanted to bring people together, to network, to connect, looking at solutions. We're just scratching the surface, like Mary said. There's plenty of opportunities, so we can learn from others' experience. We can share our experience, nurture ideas, and with those ideas, see what comes of it. So I do believe we are stepping to the right direction. We are beginning a great journey where activists like you, myself, Mary, Yusuf, fighting different causes but linked together by the search for justice, whether it is economic, whether it is independence, whether it is political, or whether it is social or environmental, that we can share and network and create a community of practice that can empower all of us to achieve our goal.
Yusuf, what reflections would you offer to anyone in the audience who runs an organization, a conventional organization, and is thinking about adopting Bitcoin? What pitfalls are there that you've had to overcome? Generally, what advice for using Bitcoin for social justice and for good?
I'm sorry, what was the first portion? The reflection?
Yeah.
Reflection. I mean, all of us sitting here is a testament to what Bitcoin represents, and that's all of us, right? It's universal. I think, myself being in the nonprofit sector and Mary being in the content creation, which is in essence storytelling, which is so extremely important, while allowing yourself, Ahmed, being in human rights activism, like those three entities or industries couldn't be further from one another, but yet we are all here connected by one common catalyst, and that is Bitcoin. Whether it's the technical aspect of it, the utility aspect of it, or what I like to focus on mostly is the intrinsic value that Bitcoin brings to the rest of the world. So if there's any reflection that I would like to take off is us being here, sitting here in this moment and being in front of all of you and learning from one another. The work that we're doing is a testament to the power behind Bitcoin and everyone else's work that's here to the power of Bitcoin as well too. So I'm extremely excited to what the future holds. I know it's a common phrase in our industry and ecosystem that we're still early, but I truly believe that is absolutely true. There's so much beyond this year to next year. I can only imagine how much larger and even better the ABC conference will be. So again, thank you to Farida and the entire staff that has put all this together. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. And Mary, I'm going to let you have the last word on Bitcoin for social good.
Yeah, sure. So like storytelling, like Yusuf rightly said, is really key. And I love what everyone here is doing. I think it will be really great to hear more of the stories behind the work that everyone is putting out. And when you put them on, Lightning-enabled platforms, I feel you not only spread the news to people who can help, but you're also creating an avenue for people, or a means through which people can support the work that you do. You know, sending tips or like getting your wallet address is just one out of several ways, but sharing your content, maybe even upvoting your content so it gets more views is also another way of spreading the word. So if anybody gets anything from this speech, or rather my reflection on what we discussed so far is, you know, like there's so much we can do with Bitcoin. I think there's a lot we can leverage using the tools that Bitcoin enables us, especially in the area of content creation. I'm just really happy that towards the end of the year, we're seeing a lot of people actually getting it. And I look forward to seeing more stories being put out there and more people being able to support the content and also the work that you're doing through these Lightning-enabled platforms.
I hope that's inspired everyone. 3 stories of using Bitcoin for social justice, and thousands more stories which are not on this stage, and hopefully we'll hear from them next time. Thank you.